Howdy! I hope you're having a positive energy filled day. In this video we're going to go over some supplies that would be helpful to have on hand if you would like to get into crystal gridding. The first thing I would like to show you is how I store my rocks and crystals for crystal gridding. This is a plastic bead container that I just take little pieces of paper and I label each one and put tape over it. This has changed throughout the years quite a bit. At first I didn't have many rocks to put in here, but I've outgrown this one into multiple containers. I like to get the ones that the sections come out. Some rocks are bigger than others and take up more space. But I like this size. You can put medium size rocks in. You can put little ones. Just a good size. What also works is things for tackle boxes. I confiscated this from my husband's fishing supplies. I really like this also. I keep my bigger ones in here because the spaces are bigger and it's easier for me to get my fingers in there. I also have little tiny ones for my really small guys. This was something from a craft shop. I think I got it at Michael's. Another thing to hold beads. Really like this. Snaps tight. That's very important. I've had this spill before. That was a nightmare. I highly suggest getting one that closes very tight. Next up is a cloth grid. Now I've said it before, you don't need a grid at all. You can set up your crystal grid on just a table. That's perfectly fine. This is one of the first grids I ever had, and it's one I made myself. I got this from Michael's. It's a non-printed bandana. It was a couple bucks on sale. You can use any piece of cloth you have laying around. And I used a tuna can, and I had just a charcoal pencil. And when I first started off, I traced a light X and made a dot in the middle. And I just started tracing my tuna can around. And the X kind of gave me something to go off of on how to make my outer circles. And you don't need to make this many circles. If you want to make a simple grid, you can just do the first out circle. That makes sense. You don't have to get all fancy and make all these. But that's how I made my first one. It can be really simple. You can make it from things you have laying around the house. Next up, a crystal point. I've said it before, I like to use a point in the center of my grid. You don't have to. You can use something that's polished, a raw stone, whatever you have. I like to use points. And when I first started off, I used them kind of double duty, because not only would I use it in the center, I would activate my grid with this also. So when my grid was all put together, I would activate, get it swirling around, and then I would just place it down in the middle. So at first you don't have to have a whole bunch of items, but here are just some points. I keep these near my gridding supplies handy. And some of my points are not flat. What I do with those is I do art also. I use a little bit of a kneading eraser. Get it soft, make a ball, and I just push it down in there. You could probably use Play-Doh if you had Play-Doh around the house. But here's an example of how I use the kneady eraser. This is a small gold grid, but this little tiny point was not flat, and I really wanted to use it for this grid because it was small. So I just put a little bit of this kneady eraser on the bottom, push it down. Problem solved. Now for one of the last items, but as we talked about, not necessary, but I like them, and it gives me an excuse to collect them, is an activation wand. Selenite, perfect. You can use it for anything. You can buy these for a few dollars. You can actually buy these off my Etsy website, and I will link that below and probably put it at the end of this video. I have these for sale. I have the bedazzled ones for sale with different colors on it. These aren't that expensive. I think they're $10 or under. You can use any other point you have. I'm going to use a point, and I don't have the coordinating crystals that are in my grid. I use clear quartz. This one is a very clear one. I've used this before. If you want to feel like Harry Potter, you can get a fancy one. I bought this from a gift shop that's near my house, but really it's some copper tubing soldered together, a crystal point put at the end, opalite. It broke and it's been super glued. But this is pretty neat. I don't use this often, but it looks really cool as a display piece. This one is very special. My husband helped make this for me. This is just like a calcite, but this is a deer antler from, there you go, from a deer I took 2 years ago. I am a hunter, and we process our own deer meat and eat it. But this is one of my antlers. And he drilled a hole in the end and sanded it down, and I put a little crystal point and had to bedazzle it and pimp it out. But this is my homemade wand that I will use to activate grids with. So you don't have to have something polished. You can make something from the earth or something that's special to you. These are probably more powerful to activate your crystal grid with because you have a connection with it, which is really important. But yeah, there's my homemade activation wand. Pretty cool. Well, thank you for watching today. I hope this helps and gave you a couple of tips if you want to start getting into crystal gridding. At first, you just need a couple supplies, but I know from experience that after you get a couple of things, you're going to get a couple more, and then your crystal collection's out of hand. But I'm going to link my Etsy shop somewhere, because I do have simple kits you can buy if you're just starting off and you don't know where to get all these crystals from. It might make it easier. So, well, have a good afternoon, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks.